Welcome, part 3, my interview with Joan Duperly. There is an interesting aspect of your life that I'd like you to highlight. You went to Ocherius and you were able to organize those ladies who braid people's hair, especially the tourists. And I would like you to let us know how you were able to achieve this.
Sure. Well, what happened is, as I say, I was involved a little bit in cultural things, and at the time Miss Louise Bennett had a radio show where you told stories, and I was invited to come and tell a story on her radio show. And I decided I should have my hair braided because it was going to be on TV. And when I went to have my hair braided, I had to sit down on a curb somewhere in Ocherius behind a truck, hiding or something, to get my hair braided. And the next thing you know is there was a policeman coming, and the girl braiding my hair ran, and I was left with one side of my head braided and one side not. And I said, what's going on? So I found out that the braiders of Ocherius were in the street, and they were considered to be a public nuisance, so to speak, and they didn't have any organization. So that the girls were trying to get customers off the street and quote-unquote harassing tourists to do so. So I thought, okay, well, there are 32 women, so I went to talk to them, and I said, look, this was not a good experience for me, and probably not one for you either, because they end up getting put in jail, some of them, in those days. And you're talking about the 80s now, so 30 years ago. And I said, this is not good, so why don't you organize up yourself? I will help you, and that's what I did. So we formed a group, and the women had to go and get some training, and they had to go and have medicals, and we had to get applied to Jamaica Tourist Board for a permit for these women to operate an attraction, which would be called Ocherius Braiding Village. And I have a very persuasive tongue, so I talked UDC into allotting us a piece of the beach at Ocherius toward the back. Actually, there used to be a statue there, a bronze statue of a woman looking pretty dejected and miserable, which has now been removed to another part of the park, I noticed. But, so we made a village there, and the women were granted a license, and it became an attraction of Ocherius Braiding Village. And today there's still a different version of it, but of the 32 women, it meant that everyone, we had a manager who stayed in the middle, and all the women did the braiding, they got their customers, and then everyone was paid on a certain day, and the woman who was organizing it received a fee for doing that, of course. So that was a pretty fun thing and successful. It wasn't that easy. I make it sound very simple, but it takes quite a while, and you have to have, if your heart isn't in it, I find it doesn't work. So, but it seemed, and also, whatever you do, you have to, it's not only be good for you, it has to be good for all. And if it has the power of doing things is that it benefits everyone equally, not that, you know, one person gets more benefit than another. So that was a lovely thing to do. I stayed with them until probably 96 or so. And I had also started a group called the Carib Art Treasures, and that was making arts and crafts out of indigenous materials. So it was 100% natural materials. And I didn't realize at the time that, you know, it was going to become such a big subject of using things which are renewable resources rather than not. So we were a little bit before our time in that. And this was a group of 10 artists, and they worked with gourds, calabash, bamboo, clay, and wood. And it was a very great company. We had a studio at the Silver Seas Hotel, and people could come and see the artists making their work and so forth. And I also became involved in the Ocherius Arts Council there, which was strong at the time. And I worked with the Jamaica Library Services in St. Anne's Bay, Miss Redway there. So, you know, it was a very active, busy time. We put on plays, and we went out and performed, and we had craft fairs and all of these sorts of things. And then, so that was about by 97 now, I'm going back to Canada. So I had found that I was starting to miss my family too much, and the novelty of them coming down here to visit me and stay with mommy down in Jamaica was starting to wear off a little bit because they were now, you know, getting married and all of these things. So I decided, well, I think maybe it's time to go back. So I went back to Canada. Again, I wasn't sure. I knew that it was going to be, I'd have to decide how to start again there. And when I went up, it just so happened that a historical society in Halifax had met and had decided that they were going to turn an old building, which is the last standing immigration shed immigration shed in Canada on the waterfront. And they decided that they were going to turn it into it's Pier 21 and the Immigration Museum of Canada, historical immigration. 1.5 million people walked through those doors, and they recreated it as a interactive. It was in 1999 is when this started, and it was a very state-of-the-art at the time museum. You know, you would walk in and you would be greeted by a customs officer, and he would ask you questions, and you would go through the virtual experience of being an immigrant. And it was started by the Immigration Historical Society of Nova Scotia, and Dr. Ruth Goldblum was very, very active and very strong, and the society raised a certain amount of money, probably I think $5 million or something like that. And then in Canada, they're very strong on heritage and the people, because of course that's the foundation of Canada, is people from 30, 40 countries that have made up the new Canada that we see today. And this went forth, and they invited me to join, and I said, fine, I would love to do that, because I feel I come from a very multicultural society, and it looked like I was home. You know, to me, it was nothing. I have to have a quick story to tell. It was sweet, but we were open 7 days a week, and sometimes I didn't want to go on a Sunday. So one Sunday I decided I'm not going to go to the museum today. I'm going to go to church instead. But when I pulled up the car, there's a statue there, and I swear I thought the statue was saying, Adrienne, you should go to work. So I thought, okay, I won't go to church, I'll go to the museum. So I went down there, went into my office, and then the next thing you know, about 5 minutes later, I hear somebody singing Evening Time coming up. There was a busload of Jamaican women who had come, about 50 women from Jamaica. And they had come into the museum, and I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. And these women, if I had gone to church and skipped out on going to museum, which I could have that day, so that just goes to show you, you know. And it was a wonderful experience. So I stayed with them for 10 years, and we did a lot of programs. And I was very glad I got to retire in 2009, and that's when I decided to come back down. I took up a project for Blue Lagoon, and that's where I am now.
Well, thank you very much. This has been very interesting. Okay, I wish you all the best.
Thank you, and thank you for having me back. Thank you for having me back here. This is beautiful.